What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the studio. Now today along the art journey here in Fireleaf Studios, we're going to be working with some latex as well as monster clay. As you can see, we've sculpted this awesome little gopher frog to absolute perfection. We even have a few little goosebumps of water accumulating on the outside of the clay. We'll get to that in a minute. Now, as you can see, we are in the outdoor workshop studio. Of course, it is summertime and we are getting humid and hot here in North Carolina. It is absolutely steaming. I'm sweating up a storm, but we're going to go ahead and utilize some daylight before the sun goes down to go ahead and start making the mold of this item. Now, I do have the fan going, so if there's some ambient noise, I do apologize, but that's just part of crafting out here in a non-air conditioned and climate controlled unit. It happens. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out of frame here. We're going to set that up on top. You should not be able to see the fan anymore, but it is blowing in the background. I also have that blowing because we're going to be using some latex. Now in this video, we were specific. My kids put that on there. My kids put some transfer tape on there and it completely ripped the label. How dare they? We're going to be using some Toxix latex. Toxix. Toxic. Toxix. Toxix. Latex. Toxix. T-O-X-I-X. Toxix. Casting latex. 407 casting latex. Now this is a premium latex for slip casting and mold dripping. Or dripping. We're going to be dripping. Anyways, perfect for prop prop making. Can be tinted or painted, highly tear and shrink resistant, easy to use by pouring or brushing on coats. We're going to be brushing on coats on this one. Now just be aware, this is the first time that I've used this latex. It's something new and I really went after it just because, one, it was available on Amazon as well as great pricing and free shipping. I like free shipping. If it don't come with free shipping on Amazon, odds are I'm not going to order it, guys. Let's be honest, that's the world we live in. Now, as far as the little critter that we created out of monster clay, this is monster clay from Monster Inc. Now, this is a medium density, so it's got a little bit of give and take to it. We sculpted this in a previous video that is already available on my YouTube channel to you amazing viewers. So you can always go back and enjoy that content of me sculpting this little frog to absolute perfection. Originally, it was just going to be the frog by itself, but I decided to go ahead and take it a step further, and even if I don't cast it every time the same way, I wanted to make a little base that I could maybe potentially cast it as one piece and sell it like that on Etsy as a diorama. And if I wanted to make just a frog and put it on a larger piece, then I can do that as well just by pouring that one little area and leaving this as a void. Pretty cool, right? So, as you can see, we do have some filler in between or underneath the frog there. That is specifically so that the latex doesn't get caked underneath. We'll be using a Dremel later on down the road if we need to kind of cut those little sections away and make the void underneath of the frog. That's just part of the casting process, part of the molding process, and you need to think about those hard edges underneath and those cavities where the latex or silicone is going to settle into and make it difficult to make molds of it or casts in the future. We'll probably be making another mold of this later on down the road. But let's be honest, guys, this will not survive this casting process. As we add the latex and I try to remove this from this is going to get all mushed up. Let's be honest. Now, you'll notice that there are some little water droplets on the actual frog itself. It's very hard to see it, but they are there. The reason for which is we are out in a steaming shed, okay, extremely hot. And that means that this monster clay is going to become very malleable. I do not mind a little bit of like a dippling on the item itself. If nothing else, it just adds a little bit more character to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our latex and go straight over the item, and we're going to put the first layer of latex on. We'll probably do 3 or 4 coats over this before we start to add in little supports to give the frog a better overall latex coverage as we work into higher levels of coats. So we'll get to that later. Just be patient. We'll jump into a time lapse in a minute after we get the first layer on and you kind of get what we're doing. Now, one of the disclaimers I have. I, for the longest time, have never needed a respirator, okay? Now, of course, I've worked with epoxies, and as more advanced epoxies have come out, They're VOC free. You don't need them as a respirator for a lot of those. I do some stinky stuff in here, but nothing that will make me think, I really got to do something different. This is not going to happen. I'm not going to kill myself with this product. Now, this right here is extremely potent. I opened this container. It's the first time I've ever used this one, and a lot of latexes have ammonia in them. But I opened this, and it is potent, extremely potent. So potent that I ordered a respirator. Okay, now it's a full face just because I wear glasses. I try to put these on over glasses. It's tough to get it on, but once it's on, right? Just do your negative test to make sure it's fitting properly. When we start to apply this, I'm going to leave this shed, okay? But what I did is, because it's so hot out here, and this is just the first coat to lock in the general shape, I need to get 2 or 3 layers on before it just really melts. Because if it gets too hot out here, that monster clay will disintegrate and start to collapse on itself. And that means that me pushing or brushing this onto all these little nooks and crannies to lock in those details would get washed away. And I don't want that to happen. This has been in my freezer for almost an hour. That is why it has some water droplets on it. It's ice cold. Ice cold. So if you feel the very bottom of this, it's still not ice cold anymore, but it is pretty cold, okay? So when we brought it from the interior ice chest or freezer out into the ecosystem, atmosphere, air, natural air, the humidity collects on that, just like a water glass. And you have humidity on the outside of your monster clay. It's okay. It's no big deal. I love it. We're good. If it bothered you, you can go ahead and wipe that off. It's only going to be ice cold for a limited amount of time, just long enough for us to get this on here and maybe do a second layer after an hour. So we're going to do 3 layers, hour after hour after hour, and then we're going to see what the buildup looks over all of the details. Once we're layered in all the details, then we'll begin building up some texture to make the overall latex a little bit thicker. Okay? So let me go ahead and get my, this opened up. We'll get my respirator on. We'll make some room here, and we're going to go ahead and barely dab some of those water droplets off, and then we're going to apply this, okay? Again, some water droplets, I'm not really worried about it, but we're going to apply this directly over it in a brush fashion. You have to do brush if you want to lock in those details. Make sure you get all the air out of it. Make sure it's a thin layer, and then we'll go from there. Okay, guys? Here, we're going to do a brush on mold. We got to do brush on mold for at least 3 or 4 layers to lock in all those details. And once the details are locked in, at that point, we can start just kind of layering it in pretty thick with some filler cotton and things like that. We'll get to that in a little bit. I'm also doing this as a test of this latex on a smaller item before I do it on a larger item, and that is going to be the Peregrine Falcon. I have a huge stump sculpted in the indoor studio, and that is going to be for the Peregrine Falcon, but I don't want to ruin it. All that bark texture I had sculpted into it, I don't want to wash it out, making a mistake with an item or a material that I've never used before. So we're going to use this on a smaller item before we use it on something big and magnificent. This guy's kind of not big and magnificent, he's just kind of cute. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and use one of my daughter's little brushes here, and it's kind of a throwaway. I plan to get her some new ones here soon, some little long-handled ones, so she's just going to be a little bit more artistic like Dad. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and get my mask on, and we're going to go ahead and get some water droplets off this. Now, is it just me, or before you put a respirator on, you better hydrate, you know, because it is a pain taking the mask off over and over again, especially with people with glasses. It's like being left-handed, you know. It's tough out there, guys. I'm not left-handed, but I'm just saying. Here's a little ASRM water chugging for you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring you in just real quick, and I'm going to show you just a little bit of dabbing those water droplets off. Again, these water droplets were caused by the transition from our monster clay from the freezer to the outdoor environment here. It is rolling into summertime. We've got a lot of water, high humidity, and it caused condensation on the item. We're going to go ahead and dab some of that off. So let's bring you in here. All right, guys, so you now see what I see. Alrighty, so as we jump into the voiceover here, and we really just start to roll through the processes, I do have, I will be putting my respirator on in just a few moments, and it's just talking through the respirator, it's just such a pain, and I just don't want the audio to be distorted so much that it just becomes distracting from the actual art that we're producing here. So this is our Gopher frog. Now, again, we're using this as more so just not only because I wanted to make one, one of our local animals in the North Carolina Zoo. But also I wanted to test out the latex on a smaller project before I do it on the big project. Okay, so that big project will be coming out later, but or may already be released at this point in time. But this is the monster clay that we're going to be laying the latex over. Now, as you can see here, we do have a lot of little water droplets all over the item here, and we're just going to use some toilet paper to just kind of dab away just the high spots away from the item here. Just dry it out just a little bit. It's not really necessary, I don't think, and I don't think really cause an adverse effect to your actual latex as you're applying it. But we're gonna go ahead and remove a little bit of those water droplets with some tissue paper. Why am I not using like a hard like fabric, like cloth, or maybe a paper towel? I just don't want something that's super high abrasive to wash out any of those little micro details that I had sculpted in. So we're going to use just some toilet paper or some tissue paper, and we're going to dab particular areas here just to kind of get that pulled up and away. It doesn't have to be super dry, guys. It's just we're just getting a little of those little condensation drops off of the item here, and then that way we can move forward with the project there. I guess if you had too much water droplets and too much condensation on the actual item here, you could probably get pockets of water underneath your latex. So I guess too much water under it would be just a negative effect, but a little bit here and there, I don't think it really causes any kind of issues, as long as it doesn't cause like excessive bubbling under that first latex layer. Now, as we apply the first latex layer, it's more of a film. Think about as if it's a membrane. This is the first sheet of the membrane to go over the entire subject, and that's where you really need to make sure that you don't have a whole lot of air pockets or air bubbles locked in over those details. And then as you build up more and more detail layers on top of it, it just gets a lot more durable, a lot stronger. Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and put on our respirator here now. I'm going to do a little bit of a voiceover here just because it's kind of a pain to hear me through the respirator, and I don't want the audio to be really distorted. And I said that just a minute ago, but I just want y'all to understand that I want y'all to get as much quality out of the content as you can. And you struggling to hear my just echoing voice out of the respirator is just not something that I would like for you to have to experience all the time. Just because this is a very long form video, and I'll be using my respirator for the first half of the video while we're working with the latex until we get it inside the house. And then we start to work on the casing. So right now I'm doing the negative and the positive test to make sure I'm getting a good form seal over my face and my glasses. Of course, the glasses do break the seal of my mask, so I need to make sure that the mask is overly tight and strapped down so that I can get a nice form fit. And once I get satisfied with how that is attaching to my face here, then we will move forward with the project. Now we're going to open up our latex here. Now again, this is Toxix latex, and it is an awesome product. I've already used it for just a little bit. It's been a while since I've actually made this Gopher frog mold and casting, and it's turned out great so far. Now I had some mishaps throughout this process because it is a new material to me. I'm so used to doing silicone molds, but I will mention those mishaps along the way throughout this video, so if you want to stay tuned, hang tight, guys. I will show you some of my mishaps so that you truly understand some things that you could do differently. And I've tried to do some things that other crafters have done here on YouTube, and I just wasn't really as successful for it. And I'll explain more of that later on in the processes, okay? Now, these containers of latex come with a silver clip all the way around the outside. There's like 6 or 7 of them. And they're just like little silver clips that keep the lid on even when it's in transit in shipping processes. There are a lot of reviews of like the lid popping open and then people getting just like a busted container of like latex just already cured in a box. What a horrible experience I'm sure that is. And of course we're just going to use a paint a lid tool here just to make sure that we get it open. I did shake it up here. Now I was thinking to myself, well, maybe some of the thicker latex material is sitting at the bottom of the container. This is a big mistake, and I learned this lesson really quick, and I'll probably never shake it up again. I'm sure there are some latex out there, materials out there that you have to really shake up to get a really good mixture in the containers, but I didn't really need to do that in this, and I messed up. I did not shake it up any after this, so The reason for which is, as soon as I pop this bad boy open, there are massive amounts of bubbles. Not only that, you have latex all over the lid of your container, and any latex that touches that lid, as your latex material goes down in the bucket, that latex on that lid cures up, and it's just wasted latex that you cannot use on your project. So we're going to roll into layer number 1. This is a real-time portion, and we'll start to go into time lapses as we roll through this content video. So just sit back, enjoy. We're just going to go ahead and brush this on a little bit. You'll start to see it drip down around the edges as we apply more and we get more confident with the overall feel of the item being applied to the subject. And that dripping down around the edges is completely normal. Let it happen, because you want to have a very strong lip around the bottom of your molding material. And I kind of like went out of my way at times to kind of really pull that back up, like those liquid puddles at the very bottom of the rock formation back up onto the item. Sometimes I just need to let go, and you're going to get a little bit of wasted material as it drips down, but that's naturally just going to happen. So just expect to lose a little bit of your material as you go. But it's supposed to be, it all comes out in the wash. As long as your item turns out absolutely awesome, then a little bit of waste is absolutely worth it. Again, we are wearing the respirator because it's super stinky, and I'm just trying to give you just a really close-up view of the item here. And we will kind of be shifting around every so often into different angles. Now here's a different angle here. Magic, right? And we're going to go ahead and layer it on here pretty heavily here now. As you can see, we've already got a lot layered on. We want to make sure we get some pushed up under that little gopher frog hole there, that little burrowing hole that the frog just may have or may not have come out of. And of course, when we go in to paint that, it'll really kind of bring depth to that. Making sure to get all of this pushed into all of these recessed sculpted textures here around the rock and around the edges of the legs. Now, when we go to demold this, take the Monsterclay out of the mold, we do get a lot of pulling around the under edges of the legs as well as the belly. Those are creases, so the latex really does settle into all of those cracks and creases around the legs. And it doesn't really destroy the latex mold, but if I really wanted to completely avoid all of those pulled areas, I would really need to go out of my way next time to really seal up any of these little cracks here around the belly, around the edges of the legs, because latex did get settled really deep into those, and it actually not only made it very hard to demold it before we made the master cast, but it also made it very difficult and on the mold itself. So like as I was pulling it out, it was pulling and twisting the latex, and it pinched it and started breaking off particular areas. Now, is that the end of the world? Probably not, because anything that doesn't survive the molding process probably is not what you want in your mold anyways. But that's also all per chance, right? It could end up pulling or tearing something that's important, like a finger or a finger webbing, or like the bottom of the hands around the rock formation. We don't know. We're just assuming that it didn't tear anything of importance. So that's all always for hindsight. I did put stuff underneath the body of the frog so that I could avoid any pulling underneath his body, but I still got recesses and little cracks that got filled in by latex, and it made the demolding process a little bit harder than what I would like to have seen. Also, I will be casting this for the first time out of the Smoothon SmoothCast of polyplastic, and that's very hard on latex molds. I did not use a mold release on this. When I go in to do the sculpture for the Peregrine Falcon, I'll probably have to use a demolder, probably like an aerosol demolder, just so I don't get any kind of excessive pooling or anything like that. I've really never had to use any demolding spray on any of my silicone molds, just because I truly just make my items to where I can easily mold them, and they don't have a lot of catched edges and things like that. But depending on what you're making, right? You may be making something a little bit more intricate with a lot of undercuts, or you may be making something very flat, and then you don't have to worry about any of this. So everybody has their own circumstances, and it just depends on what you're making. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that this is going on very nice and opaque and white. It will not stay that way. No, it will not. So not only is it going to drain down, but it's also going to kind of settle out and dry out. And as it dries out, it kind of like films up a little bit. Think of it kind of like Elmer's glue, right? You know, Elmer's glue, you usually put it on pretty thick and it's very white and opaque. And then usually when it dries, it gets a little bit clear. It may have a little bit of a white tinge to it sometimes, but it's very clear. And that's what this is going to do for the most part. It actually turns a little bit of a yellowish shade overall. And of course, we could tint this if we wanted to. If you wanted to do different layers and tint them in different colors, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to do solid white, and then we're just going to run with it. And then the final kind of color will be like an off-white, like a Naples yellow, titanium white, mixed white. And then this is just the first layer. So we're going to see it settle down here. And then we're going to go ahead and roll into maybe an hour from now. We're going to be working on the next layer, and then so forth until I get all the layers built up that I'm really happy with. I don't need the mold to be super duper thick, but I do want it to be like, I want it to give me the sense that it is strong enough to survive what I'm going to put it through, right? Now, not all molds are equal. This is me testing it out because I plan to make a lot of these types of sculptures into concrete. So most of these latex molds that I make will be concrete molds in the future. And the concrete and latex just go well together. They're a great medium. They blend well together. They work well. And I'll be using like a castor oil mold release on these later on down when I start to just solely use these for concrete. Now, when I use it for the when I want to make them into like a casting plastic or a resin or something, I'll be using silicone. So I'll be redoing this in the future with some silicone. So make sure you stay tuned for that, guys, later. I'll also post that in the molding and casting playlist, as well as the little gopher frog. So you can go back into the gopher frog and see it, see me make a silicone mold of that. Pretty cool. So here we are. We have a lot of areas where it really just settled into. And these are the areas where we have a lot more thick and opaque layers. And that's what we want. That's where it's capturing all those little micro details that we have locked in. And then there's other areas where the high raised edges, those are where the latex kind of dripped down and thinned out. But there is still a layer there. That is the most important thing. So even though it kind of thins itself out and it dries out and it clears up a little bit and it has raised edges where it's just thinner than it is in the other deeper areas, it still has layers, and that's all that matters. So we're going to continue this process all the way through some of these layers. So sit back and enjoy some of the background music. I'll pop in every so often with some voiceovers as we go through some of these layers. If I have any kind of like 2 cents from the peanut gallery over here, raise my hand. And then we'll kind of move on into the next stages. But these are really fun layers here. It's just fun just to kind of sit back and enjoy and just paint it on and just be messy. Just be messy with it. Just have fun. And you see how many drips that I have going all over the place. And don't be afraid to let it drip down and give you a nice, really strong lip around the bottom of that latex mold. Alright guys, so it is a new morning out here in the workshop. And it's technically day number 2. I brought my latex back outside. Now, I don't like to keep my latex out here because it's not a climate controlled unit and I can't keep it around 70 degrees. So I do take this inside the house. It's sealed up and it just stays under my workstation along with some of the other like plastic casting materials and things like that. That way I can keep the temperatures just pretty regular. Now, as you can see here, as we sip on some coffee first thing in the morning, got our respirator here. We got our latex back out. I need to peel some of this latex where I dripped off. And then this is the actual frog up to this point. You can kind of peel some little edges off and away from it. And you can really see like, wow, they are a really strong texture. It is easy to kind of pull it apart a little bit. But even just like look at a little droplet like right there. It has a lot of stretch to it. I'm very impressed by that. I'll include a little B-clip of me stretching one of those. But it's just kind of cool. But this is the frog up to this point. Here's some B-roll of that. He's looking really good, and we've got a good 2 coats on it. Now, I'm impressed with how thick this latex is going on the item. But as of right now, we are at the point now where we can touch it. Just like that, and it's finger dried. It's probably still curing up a little bit, but we'll go ahead and let it do its thing. And then we're going to go ahead and get the next coat on, okay? It's a little bubble there. I popped it, and we'll go ahead and get it filled in. A few bubbles here and there I'm not too worried about. Now you will notice that a lot of times when you do pours like this or brush ons, you're getting a lot of accumulation down around the bottom. And that's really necessary. That's where it's going to give a lot of strength to the actual the mold that we're making, and it keeps it from tearing at the very top edges. Now, we decided not to do a double cut mold on this right now. I could always apply that later, but I would just have to always repair that seam. We'll just see how it goes, whether or not I want to apply a cut to it later on down the road or not. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get the next layer on, and this will be layer number 3. Definitely starting to look ooey gooey, right? Looking pretty good. Now, as we build up these layers, you're going to start to see that these layers, as they cure up, will get more and more yellow, and that's just the latex drying up in its natural color. Layer number 4, moving on with these layers. It's like an onion, right? Like Shrek. Many layers, lots of layers. Alrighty, so as we move on to the next layer here, this is where I make one of my very first mistakes, and this is layer number 6. And as you can see, we really do have quite a layer of latex built up, and I'm very happy with how it's turning out. But what I've seen in other videos of creators with latex molds on YouTube is they will use a type of filler to kind of build out or bulk out their molds. And I tried this. Now this is Polyfil. It's like a fabric filler for like stuffed animals and things like that. And what you do is you dip it into latex and then you lay it in. Now maybe I did this wrong. Maybe I layered this in too thickly. And that's probably what I did. I probably layered it in very too thick. I probably should have took out small little strands, maybe like a dime size, and then dipped them and then put them on here. Now I did not do that. So as you can see, I have quite a bit of it on there now. Everything with this turned out great except for the large segment under the burrow and under the chest of the frog. The rest of it is extremely strong. So I find that when I did this in very thin manners, it worked out great. Where I made it too thick, more than maybe 1 or 2 centimeters, it was a negative. It created too much of a spongy feel in the latex mold, which eventually, if the molding or decasting process took any kind of strenuous activity or stretching, it caused like tearing in the latex mold. Okay, so I had 2 places where the latex mold tore. Is that the end of the world? No, not really. It also just means that I have to cut that part of the latex mold away, make repairs as I can, which I'll probably make a video on making a latex mold repair. I mean, I messed up, but I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to try to fix it. Why not? Maybe I can teach myself something new by trying to fix it. But what it does is it allows us to learn from our mistakes. Let's be honest with that. You know, you try something, if it doesn't work out, just because it worked for somebody else or worked for me, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for the same way for you, right? But this is, of course, just a generalistic, fun process. And so next time, what I'll probably do is I'll probably pour, like little big, large voids like that, I'll probably pour all that in pure latex. Does that mean I may have to, like, turn the castable item in particular ways to get it to pull into those little crevices, or apply excessive layers? Yeah, that could be the case. I may have to apply extra layers to those areas specifically so I can get those buildups that I need without maybe having to use the Polyfil. So when I go in to make the mold for the Peregrine Falcon, I will try to avoid using any Polyfil. I don't want to risk damaging a casted mold that large, and it is a large project, guys. So here we are. Now this is the very end. We've already let this cure up. It was like 8 to 9 layers of latex, and of course you know that we already had the Polyfil in there as like kind of like a concrete medium. You dipped it in there, you applied it, you fill it in with latex, and then we let that cure up, and we did one more layer on top of that. Okay, so I could have continuously built up layers even more and more and more, but the external jacket of the latex is not what was weak. What was weak was the interior latex before I got to the Polyfil. Okay, so that's the part that tears. The inside part is what tears. The outside part is rock solid. Okay, so don't think that I didn't put enough layers on top of this over the Polyfil, and that's what we're causing those problems. So another thing is I decided to go ahead and remove this light layer of film here, this latex film over this plastic palette here. And then I was going to go ahead and cut it to size. I really just deep down really wanted to cut it to size. I just did. I knew it was going to be super satisfying. It was going to be an enjoyable process to use the scissors on the latex. And I should have waited. Should have waited. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but when I went to make my gypsum mold, which we'll do in just a minute, when I took it out of the gypsum mold, it caused a crack around the upper rim, and I'll show you that in a moment. It's not integral at all to the actual casting of the subjects in any way, but like to somebody who's OCD, yeah, it kind of bothered kind of bothers me. So we're gonna go ahead and finish trimming this out, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the gypsum layer. Now the gypsum is not like an all-encompassing, like extremely hard plaster exterior. It is harder than plaster of Paris. And it really does work very well. It cures up extremely fast, and it gives you a really nice strong structure to the exterior of your item without having to go above and beyond to apply a bunch of additives and cloths and things like that. Now the bigger the item, probably the more support you need to add to those items, but when we're talking about something like this, all we're trying to do is making a nice cup for this latex mold to sit down into, just to give it that support it needs so it doesn't mold itself when there's medium poured into it. Okay, so that's the whole goal of those outer jackets, is it keeps the general shape of the molded item, and protects the mold from becoming deformed when you pour stuff into it, especially if you were going to do like concrete, which we eventually plan to do. So all these are kind of like back tests for concrete pours and things like that. So go ahead and cut the rest of that away there, and we'll let that fall off to the side. I'll probably save this. You never know when you might need a little string of latex or something. And then overall, we had a pretty smooth bottom to that latex mold. Looks pretty good overall. Not too shabby, eh? Not too shabby. And we're going to flip this over, and we're going to put it back down on our little plastic palette here. All right, looking pretty good so far, you guys. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull out some gypsum. Now, I did order my gypsum from Amazon, and it came in from China. So I did have to wait about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks for that to come in the mail. And I ordered 10 pounds, which should be enough to do at least the stuff. If I have to order more when I get to the actual peregrine falcon of the falcon sculpture, then I will do so. So we'll go ahead and get that out here in just a moment as I'm cleaning up the edges of the mold, being a little bit OCD. And I know I can be OCD sometimes about these things. I'm also tempted to go ahead and cut out the Monsterclay. Let's not do that quite yet. We're going to go ahead and put it down here, but it doesn't keep us from kind of cleaning some of this up. Some of that did not cure as it should, so I do need to leave that exposed to the air just a little bit. But otherwise, it's pretty good overall. Now that looks a lot cleaner than it did before we trimmed that that mold. Don't lie. Now you can also put the gypsum mold directly over that unclean surface, and then that gypsum mold would just be formed to the bottom of the latex there, and then you can just trim the latex around over the gypsum mold. You can do that. It's just two different ways of doing it. I decided to go ahead and trim mine, make it look nice and neat. I just wanted to use scissors on the latex, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pour the mold over, or the casting over this, and that's going to give it the protection and the support it needs. So this stuff is extremely messy. It's extremely dry. So we're just going to pull out a little bit at a time, and then we're just going to, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use it in a plastic bag. I've showed in the past where I use plaster and Paris to in a plastic bag as a filling medium. So I'll put it in plastic bags, I'll mix it up to the consistency I want, and then what I'll do is I will kind of batter baste the mold or what I'm working with. And we're going to do that here, because I just don't want this all over my workstation, and I almost get it all over the workstation anyways. But what we're going to do is we're going to add just a little bit more here, and then we're going to add the water here. This also sets up quite quickly, you guys. So when you're doing this, focus. Don't get distracted, because you'll come back and the bag will be completely solidified. It really does set up on its own, even if there's really not a whole lot of oxygen sitting on it. Once you add water to this stuff, it does not take very long for it to solidify. And after it dries in the bags, it is absolutely crispy and dry. It's very brittle, very crispy. So get the mixture you want, get as much water in there as you need, and then get it on your subject as fast as you can. I would also recommend, if you can possibly, do your support casting in 1 or 2 pours if you can. I would highly recommend you do that, and it just makes things a little bit simplistic, because sometimes this is such a smooth product when it goes onto there, the item, that if you apply another layer on top of this one, and they don't bond properly, then you could have a shelling, and whereas one outer shell cracks, and then you have a lot of cracking on your external protective casting shell there. So we're going to go ahead and pour this over the item here. Now, because we're pouring this over the latex, and the latex is separated from the plastic on the palette, we will get a little bit of underpour underneath the edges of the latex. You're going to see in a minute, it makes it a little bit more difficult to demold this from the plaster or the gypsum in this situation. So we're going to go ahead and pour this on there, get a nice shell going, then we'll make a separate batch. So we're only going to do 2 batches on this, and then we'll go ahead and pour that in there. So another batch around the item here. There you go, nice and smoothing it out there with our fingers. Don't be afraid to be messy, but not so messy that we don't use gloves. I don't want all that on my skin and have to wash my hands for like 10 minutes as it's getting between all my little hairs on my fingers and my hands. It's just, dudes out there understand. The dudes out there understand. Go ahead and pour this around the other side that we missed here. And what I really wanted to do is I wanted to create a flat bottom for this, so that way it would just be easy to use. I'm kind of successful with that in a way. It's not a super flat bottom, because I didn't want to just continuously use more material just to make a flat bottom. And it's such a small mold anyways, I'm not really worried about that. If it was a substantially larger mold, I may go out of my way to add more layers to get a really smooth flat bottom so it sits level. But today I didn't feel like I needed to waste more material to do that. But I will continuously smooth this out until I'm really happy with just how smooth the exterior jacket is. So you'll see this continuously get smoother and smoother and smoother as it starts to dry out, and I'll add water to my hand to smooth that exterior edge. But even right now, like, you could leave it just as it is right now. It may be a little bit weak because of how thin it is, but otherwise it's still a really strong subject. And that's why I like the little plastic baggies, because I was able to make up another batch there and easily pour that on in a different consistency. And now we're at the point where we're really just going to start to smooth it out here. I believe that was the second coat. I can't remember. That may have been the last remnants of that first bag. But either way, you pour as much on as you want to pour. You just go for it. You just do as much as you want to do. How about that? Just working it, making sure I can kind of smooth it out ever so slightly. Just make it, I want it to look nice, right? Like, it's my very first one in latex mold in a very long time, but it's my first latex of this type, this Toxix latex, and I want it to be successful. I think everybody wants to be successful in the art that they create. I did get a little bit of a ridge right there over where the frog in the bottom of him is, right there where his front legs are. So I am trying to smooth that out a little bit, just so it's not so jagged and it doesn't look so ugly. Here's a second batch. I was right. There's a second batch. And this is what's going to really fill it out there, and I'm going to apply just a little bit of a flat base to it. If anything else, it just means that I can lay it all flat on my desk and it doesn't like roll away from me like you're never going to cast me. Do you get it? You're never going to cast me. You catch me? Cast me? Catch. Play on words. Okay. John, you're such a goober. Here we go. So there we are with the second layer here. Now, as you can see, we're really just going to go over it with another layer. I'm doing this while it is still wet, so we get a really good bond between the layers here, instead of letting it powder over and then applying the next layer, which I feel like that just creates a film and it just keeps you from having an absolute perfect bond. I think wet on wet is better, but that's just me. So I'm applying a little bit of water to my hands, and that really activates the outside of the gypsum here, just like it does with plaster. And we're getting a really nice smooth surface. Now, eventually this starts to pull because it dries out so fast. So we start to get a lot of pulling on the gypsum. And then I'm using another plastic covered palette to get a really strong, nice bottom to it. But it's still not level as I'd like it to be, but it's okay. It's all right. I'm happy with it. Now I go ahead and ditch the glove here. I'm using my finger here just to kind of smooth it out until I'm just kind of happy with it. Smoothing out some of those rough edges, still around the bottom of the jaw of the frog. Still rough right there, but it's okay. And then look at my fingers, look how messy they are. Spraying the outside of the jacket, and then we are about all set, guys. We're going to let this set up for around 2 days. 2 days, and we're going to let it do its thing. I did get a little bit of like chipping right there on the exterior edge of that item. But as you can see, this is only like 15-20 minutes past when I laid the gypsum down. And it is already able to be pulled up. So it does set up pretty fast, but it doesn't cure up pretty fast. You got to give it time. Here's where I had that little bit of gypsum roll over there onto the bottom of the latex mold. That's where leaving that latex messy lip on the bottom like before you make your mold, your jacket would probably be better. But we did not do that. So this gypsum is so hard that I can't get my X-Acto knife down into it at all. And I'm afraid I'm going to damage the latex mold when I shoot through it. So I end up giving up on this, cutting it, and I just go ahead and go to some pliers, these are the needle nose, and I'm just going to grab and then pull up and chip around the edges of the latex mold where it's weak. Okay, remember I said earlier that it doesn't give me a perfect edge and I ended up breaking a piece off? Yeah, it's coming, guys. Here it comes. This is the second major mistake that I made because I technically shouldn't have cut that edge away when I did the latex, when I cut the latex into the circular pattern on the bottom. So at this point, this is where I should have had the latex going over the edges of the gypsum, and this is when I should have cut my latex. And then I wouldn't have to be working with all this extra gypsum here. I would have a clean bottom on the base. So next time, just let the gypsum come up to the bottom. See there where it chipped off. Is it going to hurt the mold? No, it's not. It is not. But it hurts me deep down as an artist that loves perfection. Yeah, it hurts me there. Chipping this away here, just to get it exposed here. And then it actually comes out of this gypsum pretty easily overall. And then, of course, getting it out, getting the plastic out of the actual the casted mold here after we remove the Monsterclay is the hard part. Because I did not use a mold release and I'm using plastic over latex, it really does create a strong bond, and it works out. I get my master mold out, and it really doesn't hurt the mold so much that I can't fix it. But I did get some stretching and some a little bit of slight tearing on the mold that I'll have to go in and fix. So again, to reiterate, I'll probably be making a video of that in the future if you're interested in seeing that. Of course, if this video is posted, later on down the road, then that's probably already released as well. So you can always check that out on those playlists. I'll probably post that under the tips and tricks playlist as well. So kind of chipping that away there. I'm trying not to apply too much pressure to the latex there. And then here we are going to go ahead and try to pull this out here just a little bit at a time. I don't want to break my my jacket here. So just be gentle with it, that's all. Now just remember that your jacket is only there just to give it general support. It's not like a make it or break it type of thing. As long as it has the general shape of the item that you're creating, that's the main goal. And of course, the makeup and the thickness of the mold that you're casting with really makes a difference as well. So is it flappy? Is it very stiff? Is it sitting upright? Does it have to be vertical? Can it be laying down? All those things are like distinguishing factors on how it can lay out there. Trying to trim that up with a little bit of X-Acto knife action there. Easier said than done. This gypsum is actually quite hard. And there we are. There's that broken edge there. It hurts me in deep down, but it is what it is. I'm able to make molds of this now, so I'm happy with that. And of course, I know that after my master cast is done, then I'll also be making a silicone mold of it as well in the future. So it's not the end of the world. I know that I'll be able to make more of those in the future because I have my master cast, which is pretty cool. At this point, the Monsterclay can almost go back into the container, be melted down made into a new subject. But I don't do that right away. I sit it off to the side and I decide to hang tight. I want to make sure I get a perfect plastic mold of this or casting before I destroy that Monsterclay. Looking pretty good. Speaking of Monsterclay, let's get that Monsterclay out of that latex, shall we? So go ahead and remove that from the jacket again. And I'm really happy with the jacket, and like I said, we got a little bit of chipping there, but that's no big deal. It does its purpose, and it has a job, and it does its job very well. So no worries there. Go ahead and clean up this area here. Look at what a mess this made. Now, I do believe this could make some good flocking if I dyed it. Maybe, we'll never know. We'll just see. We'll save some of this, and maybe we'll see if we can dye it with some inks and make some dirt flocking or something. I don't know. Scrape that off in the container there and clear out my space here. And look at that. Nice little shavings of gypsum. Pretty cool. I wonder if you ground down gypsum, could you use it again? Makes you wonder, right? If I ground that down into a powder and then rehydrated it with water, would I be able to turn it into something else, even after it had been cured with water before, into a solid state? Makes you wonder. And here we are. We're going to start removing the Monsterclay from the mold here. And as you can see here, it's actually pulling out quite well. Pretty easy, right? Look at that. It pulled out very easily. And then we're going to pull it over the rock. And oh, we're hitting some resistance here. Some resistance. And okay, all right. So remember this. We had resistance, right? But we had some uncured latex underneath, even underneath the rock that we had put under the sculpted element, which is the frog. That's unfortunate. So we had resistance when we pulled the subject out there, and now we have the Monsterclay frog that we need to get out. We got a lot of undercoats of latex underneath the frog, and we need to cut that away to get the frog out in its wholesome. So I do need to use some scissors here, and we're going to do some little bit of trim work. Now, whenever you're doing this, just be very careful about what you take away. You don't want to take away something important. That's it. You don't want to take away something that's important or integral to the actual sculpture itself, because then you have to always, because this is a mold, you always have to come back and fix it later. Now, I personally don't mind having to remove areas later. So if something happened to like the void underneath the burrow, where we have that little rock overhang, and I had to cut that out with Dremels, whether it be concrete or whether it be plastic or mold resin, I'm okay with that. I'm not really worried about that. However, if it's something, say like removing a frog leg, and then I have to always re-sculpt that frog leg every single time, to me that is a failure. If I have to add to the item to finish it, apart from just adding flocking and stuff, if I have to add like stuff to the main sculpted item, then that's a fail. If I have to remove, then I'm not so upset about it, because that's super easy. It's easier to remove than it is to add after it's all finished out. So here we are cutting away some of the underbelly there. So you can see the bottom of the frog legs. There's the frog leg there. There's another one popping out right there. Cutting away a little bit of the latex over the leg. Just enough to get it exposed. You don't have to cut out a whole lot, just enough. It's like kind of like almost like doing surgery, I would think. Here we go. So it's starting to pop out now. Just going to go ahead and push out the nose of the frog, getting a little bit of pulling there. Where on the right hand upper portion it's kind of sticking. That latex did pull out of the item, so that's good. And then we got a little bit of pulling there. You remember where you're getting pulling, so that needs to be cut away. But that's no problem whatsoever. Again, we can just do some tidying up on the actual latex mold itself, and like I said, this is mostly more of a test than anything else. And hey, look, this little frog came out pretty good overall. As malleable as the monster clay is, it did give us a little bit of chalking on the exterior, but it usually does that when we apply any type of molding material to the outside of the monster clay. It makes it a little bit more powdered looking. That's just naturally going to happen. So here I am just trimming out some of the edges of the latex mold here. Anything that I think that would be an excessive like catch on any kind of like casted mediums here. Now I'm not using any kind of mold release. So next time I make this, it's probably going to be out of concrete. And I'll probably mention that again in a minute. But look, this thing has turned out pretty good overall, and I'm pretty happy with it. So just be aware that that polyfil is in those two little pockets again. So as we're working with it here in the the end portions of this video here, I'm going to get a lot of pulling on those particular areas. So there are two areas of focus here, guys. So again, one, the polyfil is under the lip of the burrow, or the molded burrow that the frog is coming out of. And then the other one is under the neck of the frog. So you can kind of see those two little nodes inside the latex mold. And those are the places where we get the most tugging on the mold as we're demolding our surface, our subjects, okay? So what we're going to do now, latex and plastic, again, really don't go right together, and I'm not using a mold release. This is my fault, guys. So I have some on order. It'll be in the next a few weeks or so. So I'll be using that when I make the stump for the Peregrine Falcon, as well as the Peregrine Falcon. I have to use something in there to give clean releases, because I do not want that large mold damaged in any way, because I plan to make a lot of those in the future for other customers as I get into higher editions of that casted sculpture. So here we are. We're going to put it in the jacket here, and we're going to go ahead and get ready to make the first mold. Now we're going to be using SmoothCast Moldsar 300 in this. I have around a gallon of this at this point in time, and we're going to be using this in the latex mold here. So here I'm also just like kind of nitpicking over some of the outside edges, and in all honesty, that little edge of the jacket that broke free is just absolutely bothering me. I don't like that it doesn't look full and complete, but I know it's going to get the job done. Alright, so let's go ahead and give just a small transition like jump here. As you can see, my hands are covered in powder, and now we have a little clean station here. I've already washed my hands, got that dust off there, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mix up some SmoothCast 300. And we're going to mix up just enough to kind of pour this in. And what is that orange container on the left-hand side? Yes, it is one of my kids' Easter little plastic containers for Easter candy. Why not use something that's going to be already thrown away as a mixing cup? Because, you know, why not recycle at least until we get rid of it ourselves? Because it's going to go in the trash anyways, or recycling, so why not use it before that? Okay. But anyways, so we have our mold here. Now we've got it really nice and cleaned up, and other than that break on the jacket, you really can't tell that there's anything wrong with it, and it's going to work great. We're on that expectation that it's going to work great now. So we're going to mix our A and B SmoothCast by weight. So we're going to go ahead and mix this out here. I got a little bit of glugging there on my gallon container there, so that spilled just a little bit over the edge there. No big deal. And then we're going to go ahead and mix up the blue as well. Alrighty, so we need to mix up the blue to around 8.0 or 8.2 at the most. That way we get 1 by 1 weight. I just slowly pour it out there until we get the desired weight. And then we'll go ahead and get this mixed up in this little half egg plastic container. And then we'll go ahead and pour this into the mold there. Now, of course, because I am pouring it from an egg container, it's not as clean a pour as I would like to see. It is what it is. Let's just be messy with it. Now, the great thing about this is it is fast set, okay? So this is going to set up extremely fast. So the more you mix, sometimes the faster it sets up. It just starts that catalyst right away. And so we're going to go ahead and mix this up extremely quick and go ahead and pour it in the container. Now, if you were sensitive to any kind of chemicals or anything like that, or like reactions, I would definitely wear some gloves, guys. It doesn't bother my hands at all. Even when I spill it on my hands, I usually wipe it off. And even if it starts to cure up while it's on my hands, it really doesn't hurt my hands because my hands are so tough. Because I'm blue collar, guys. I'm blue collar. I'm not a full-time artist as I wish I was, but it is what it is. So here we are. We're going to mix it up. I feel like it's time to go ahead and scrape off our popsicle stick. We're going to set that off to the side. We may need it later. We do not know yet. And then we will go ahead and pour this into our mold here. Slide that over here and settle that. I'm trying to make that as level as possible. Here we are. We're going to go ahead and pour it in. There we go. Now we'll use a popsicle stick to make sure I push all of those air pockets out from underneath the edges of the frog. I don't want there to be any like massive air pockets under there. This is the most important cast, you guys. This is the master cast. This is the cast that I'll use to make other latex molds or silicone molds in the future. So this is the mold. This casting has to be perfect. If anything else, if it destroyed the mold, this one has to be perfect because I need to get rid of the Monsterclay and it's already destroyed. So this one has to be absolutely perfect. It's got to be. It has to be. You know that movie reference then? Then we could be friends. So here we are. We're going to go ahead and push this out here. Any kind of bubbles that are rising in the surface. Now, it almost tries to set up. So you can see it starts to pale out there. Look, I got my popsicle stick just at the nick of time before it started to set up. And actually, it's set up in my cup as well. Wah, wah, wah. Yeah, it did. So I do have to mix up a small new batch here. It is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. We're going to pour that in there until it's up to the tippity top. I almost over pour it here by accident, but that's okay. It's no big deal. I plan to sand the bottom of this to make it super smooth later on down the road. So no worries at all with that. So here we are. We're going to go ahead and pull the first cast. This is the master cast. This is the cast that I'll keep off to the side, and it will be used for what I make other molds of later on down the road if I ever need to reproduce the molds to sell more items, okay? So here we are. We're popping this out here. Now, everything's going pretty smoothly overall. But we're going to run into those snags as I spoke of earlier. And those two snags being where I use the Polyfil. Now those are the large nodes that are kind of settled into the under portions of that latex mold or the original sculpture. And this thing gives some resistance, guys. It is tough, tough, tough. Now this is not the place where the latex mold originally broke. The next one is. So I cast two of these back to back. And in the next one, I got the tearing over some of those edges. So here I am, I'm inspecting it. A little bit of tearing right there, a little bit of that is visible. Yeah, I'm not really digging that, I'm not really liking that. After this next pour, I truly realized that I'm going to have to either use a mold release, going to have to, or I'm just going to have to potentially just use a silicone mold. Now, I have not casted concrete in this yet, but I will be making a short video on that later on down the road of me touching onto that subject. So just be aware, I have never made a concrete mold or a concrete cast, but that is really what I'm gearing these latex molds towards in the long term, even if I'm using them just for the plastic for the first 1 or 2 casts, okay? The long-term goal is that they will be a concrete type of casting mold. So this first casting turned out absolutely phenomenal in every single way. It has all of the details that I sculpted in. It is not missing anything. It's absolutely perfect. Are there some areas where I could probably trim it up and shape it up just a little bit? Yeah, possibly. I could probably trim up the base, flatten it out a little bit, and then smooth out some little high-raised bubbles or edges. A little bit of a coupling edge there on the outside edge of the leg. It's no big deal at all. Of course, that underneath of the frog can always be kind of like just dremelled away, so we have a void under him like he was originally designed. But otherwise, he's turned out pretty good overall. I'm pretty happy with how he turned out, and again, this is the master mold. Now, of course, with this, we're also going to make just the frog itself. That individual frog will be making a reappearance in the peregrine falcon sculpture. So just be aware, you'll be seeing that appearing later on in that sculpture series of that peregrine falcon, which is pretty cool. Now, here in the near future, or if I haven't posted it already, you'll be seeing me make a latex mold of the stump. That's the hickory stump, the base of the peregrine falcon, so you'll be seeing that pop out there. I am having to do a little bit of latex removal here. Remember I said I got some pinching under the edges of the frog? Yep, there it is. There's a little bit of pinching, so I'm having to pull some of that latex out of the edges and some of those creases around the legs. It is what it is. There's nothing really I can do about that. But basically, as the latex mold gets broken in, those become a little bit more diluted. Those cracks become less and less there. But there we have it. The master cast is completely done, and I really do hope you guys enjoyed the laid-back format of this video. Let me know in the description below, what animals or critters would you like to see in the future? Do you want more latex or silicone molds or something else in between? I hope you guys enjoyed the content that I'm creating here on YouTube for you guys. Make sure you check out the playlist, subscribe, check you later. Toxix. Toxic. Toxic. Toxix. Toxix. Toxix.